Well, of course, the challenge when you're last is to have something new to say. So I'm going to start by telling you a story of two women that took place during the federal election campaign of 2004. Or maybe it was 2006. They start to all blend together in your mind. But at any rate, there was a forum at the Unitarian Church. Anne McClellan at the time was the minister, one of the two ministers who could sign a security certificate and put somebody away in indefinite detention with no trial and no chance to prove their innocence. So at the forum, unbeknownst to Anne, Sophie Harkat was in the audience. Sophie is a feisty, fighting Quebecois woman who has been extremely active and one of the people, along with many others, responsible for the fact that we have come this far that the Supreme Court has declared the present process illegal. Sophie came to the mic and she introduced herself. She said, "My husband has been in jail since 2003, I think it was. She said, "I have a question for you, Anne." She said, "If it were you or your husband, would you agree that it was just?" Anne talked around and around and around and eventually, said, "It's the law." And Sophie said, "I didn't ask you if it was the law. I asked you if it was just." And Anne McClellan could not answer. And that is the crux of the matter, that we have a point in time in our society here where the gap between justice and the law is being established on a new basis in the name of the war on terror. So I want to say a couple of things about it's not a war on terrorism, and it's an important distinction. It's a war on terror. It's not like any other war that's ever been declared, because who you're fighting is not very clear. There's no end to it. There's no point at which you're going to have an armistice or a negotiation or a peace or a surrender. It goes on forever. And so this new situation called war on terror, which goes on, forever without an end, is then the justification that we have to have, that this is exceptional circumstances, and now we're going to have rule by exception. It's a teach-in, so I have to say something educational, okay? So this is but it's an important question, because what is rule by exception? It says that everything which heretofore in the society, which we have come to accept as normal, which we think of rule of law. What do we think rule of law means? It means you get a trial. It means you get to defend yourself. It means you get to know what the evidence is against you and so on. We think of that as rule of law. But when you establish a new rule of law in which none of that applies, that's what's going on here. So of course it goes far beyond the 5 people who are incarcerated. Now another aspect of this is that the war on terror is the justification for secrecy, for these mysteries of state, which can only be known by those who are holding power. And the rest of us, not only do the rest of us shouldn't know them, but it's actually like a principle of leadership that you should lie and deceive people, because people have to be told whatever needs to be told in order for this security and this war on terror to carry on. So, the Harper government and the Martin government before it and so on and so forth, they love secrecy. CSIS loves its secrecy. Most of you probably remember that the Globe and Mail published the blacked out document they got from Freedom of Information, as well as the leaked document they got on the security situation in Kandahar, written by the Canadian diplomats in Kandahar. Well, they blacked out all of the information which said that the human rights situation had gravely deteriorated in Afghanistan, and they blacked out all of the information which proved that the government knew that they were sending people to torture, that they were sending people, that they were committing, the Canadian government was committing not just human rights violations, but international war crimes. And they blacked out all that information. Why? Because of security reasons. It was not in the interest of security that Canadians should know that their government is committing war crimes. So there are many, many examples. I'm sure that all of you could come forward and give these examples. But the point is that the whole argument which is made on this is that we as citizens do not have the right to know, and that this secrecy is necessary in order to protect us. So that is the basis of one of the bases of the whole argument which is being made on the need for security certificates. So the government is now introducing new legislation in which it's going to have a CSIS-approved lawyer who gets to see the evidence against you. Okay, I mean, all of the human rights lawyers who we respect and who have taken a stand and fought on this, I'm quite sure that not a single one of them will be approved as a CSIS-approved human rights lawyer. But you and your lawyers, you and your legal team, if you are charged, will still not be able to see the evidence. So they want to further now entrench in law this secrecy, this rule by exception, this idea that all of the principles that we come to think of as rule of law, as normal, no longer apply in this society. So how are we going to respond to this? I think, you know, I liked what Paul said before us about danger, and I hope that each of it and every one of us considers ourselves a greater danger to the United States than the people who are presently in jail, because it's going to take a lot of work to change the situation. So the point I want to make on this, if I can remember where I was going, is the question that there is no balance between security and rights. That is not how the question poses itself. And so we need to say, our security lies in our fight. Our security lies in our fight for the kind of Canada which stands in the world for peace, for international law, for the recognition of the rights of people everywhere. Our security stands in our fight for an anti-war government. Our security stands in the defense of the rights of all. Our security stands in the defense of our principle that no one is illegal. Thank you very much.